Hello, everyone. My name is Jarecki, and welcome back to Elevate Your Business, where we try to help you understand what's really important about driving your business success. With us today is Mark Albert. I met Mark recently, and boy, did we have aligned thoughts relative to what leadership really means in organizations. I'm really excited for him to be part of the show and share his thoughts. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show. Would you mind sharing more about yourself and your business?
Well, Ed, thanks so much for having me. Really enjoy the opportunity to discuss what I've done and I think the takeaways for other business owners and entrepreneurs. So I spent 25 years on television news in the US. I was a correspondent at CBS News, and then I created and led a national investigative unit. And so 25 years sounded like a real nice number, real round number, quarter century. I've got the gray hair to prove it. And so at that point, I thought, let me do something adjacent to journalism, not different, because I had a lot to give, a lot to add, but I wanted to do something adjacent. And so the company that I've built, we do media training, public speaking, strategic and crisis communications, and even video production. And we help, whether it's individuals, organizations, companies, government agencies, to master their message and amplify their influence. And we do some video production stuff with government agencies, as I mentioned. So essentially, we're trying to help people really harness their story and tell that story with the world in various ways, whether it's getting free news coverage, whether it's getting paid speaking gigs, whether it's being on a podcast or being on a board seat, whatever it happens to be, letting people know how they can communicate more effectively with more connection their own message.
I can only imagine the stories that you've got being the head of a criminal investigative unit. And I think you worked for CBS for several years too. Was that the same time as overseeing the criminal investigative unit?
No, so I was a correspondent at CBS News, traveled the world, traveled the US, covering stories. I was in Peru, Australia, Taiwan, and then across the country, based in DC, but covering whatever the story of the day was. So it could be light features, could be weather, could be something, nefarious. And then I left CBS and I created the first ever national investigative unit for Hearst. So we remember William Randolph Hearst. They own newspapers like the San Francisco Chronicle, Houston Chronicle around the country. They own TV stations around the country that carry ABC, CBS, NBC programming, digital radio. So I led their national investigative unit, also based in DC, and I did that for 5.5 years.
And that leads us into that first question. You've had an incredible amount of success. How you define success today and how that definition has evolved over time.
Well, in 25 years in journalism, I was very interested in making sure not just that we were uncovering the truth, holding people accountable. That was success for me, breaking stories ahead of the competition. Rarely is there a better feeling than breaking a story on the 6 o'clock news and knowing that all of your competitors now at 6:01 have to try and chase your story, quote you. And so, for example, we break stories in CNN, the Washington Post, Politico. They're quoting us, they're quoting me. That's a great feeling. And of course, being recognized by your colleagues with awards. I won a Peabody Award, which for broadcast is essentially the Pulitzer, right? Pulitzer is normally for print journalism. And so won a Peabody, won a dozen Emmys. That was my measure of success. And of course, getting answers for families and victims and people that either the government or people in power wouldn't give them. That is a definition of success. Later in life, though, I pivoted to finding my joy. How do I find joy? Not just satisfaction, not just career success, but how do I find joy in what I'm doing? And I can honestly say that journalism is fulfilling, honorable, important, essential for a democracy. I didn't always find joy. So now that I run my own company, I only do the things I want to do, and I only help the clients I want to help, and I pick on the projects that I think I can make a difference, whether those are civic communication projects, whether those are some where I feel like we can really help change the narrative or spread a message. That's a shift for me, to be honest, Ed. That's a real big shift. And I'm having the time of my life now that I am the entrepreneur. I am the person in charge of the business. In journalism, you're not really in charge, right? You may have a fancy title and you lead this unit or that unit, but there's always somebody else. And here, the client is our ultimate boss, but I'm in a great position where I can finally chase the joy in my life and the projects that I do.
There's a resonation between those projects, that client, and yourself. And so that's a win all the way around.
Exactly.
And when you think through that, was there a pivot point that took you from that point of it's really the power, the opportunity, the position to that point of I want to be happy? What was it that drove you through that change?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. How long do we have? So here's how I would say, and I'm going to be really blunt and honest. In journalism school, you're often taught that the mountaintop is to work for a network, right? Or a major paper. I was broadcast journalism so for us, it was really CBS News, NBC News, ABC News, right? CNN, Fox News, etc. And you work your whole career, whether it's in journalism or healthcare or law, whatever, and you're working toward that mountaintop, whatever your mountaintop happens to be. Mine was working for a network. And when I finally got to the network, Ed, I realized that wasn't the mountaintop for me, that I had been striving for 15 years to get somewhere, and I got there through a lot of hustle, which we can talk about later, and it wasn't what I imagined. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved my time at CBS News. It was a real career definer for me. It was an amazing opportunity, and I'm so very grateful to the network and the people that made it happen. But I realized that's not where I was going to end my career. And I felt a little unmoored at that point. I felt a little bit lost because if you get somewhere that you've tried so hard to be and you realize that, well, I'm not going to be ending my career here, what do you do next? How do you define yourself? You can't go crawl in a cave and call it a day, right? You still have to move forward. And so for me, the pivot point was that moment when I realized that I need to get off that mountain and go chase another goal. And so I found a lot of fulfillment in creating a national investigative unit for Hearst. But then when I left journalism, I realized that wasn't the mountaintop I wanted either. And so for me, the greatest challenge in my career was when you achieve something you've always wanted and it isn't what you decide you actually want. What do you do then? And that was a moment for me, not of reinvention necessarily, but of pivoting, to use your word, to something that I would find joy in, something that I could still make a difference, could still feel fulfilled and honorable, but where I would feel most at ease and most meant to do. And so for me, the challenge has been that pivot. And I'm very glad that I did it. It was many years ago, and I think I'm a better person for it.
What a great story. And for our audience out there, there is some incredibly powerful message in that, including the fact that sometimes our passions in life do change, especially once we realize what we thought we wanted and we didn't get there. I know I can definitely relate. And of course, that journey includes challenges and trials and tribulations. What are one or two of those top challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome those in reaching your success?
Well, let me tell you a little story. I had always admired CBS News. My favorite correspondent was Scott Pelley, who is based in Dallas and then ultimately became the anchor of the CBS Evening News. And I knew I wanted to work at Walter Cronkite's network, Edward R. Murrow's network, and I wanted to be there. Well, in 2012, I finally figured out how to get the network's attention. And they called me for a job interview. I was in Minneapolis. I was an investigative reporter at the time, had been there 7 years already, had won my Peabody. And I went through not one, not two, not three, not four rounds of interviews, but five. I met with the president of CBS News at the time, the director of talent at the time, the bureau chief in DC, where I would be based. And Ed, I thought I killed it. I thought I absolutely nailed it. In fact, I was so confident that I was going to get the job, I even started looking for apartments and condos in DC on one of my interviews after the interview had finished for the day. And it got down to the final two people. And then I was the first loser. And I didn't get the job. And I was crushed. I thought it was meant to be. And so I tucked my tail between my legs. I went back to Minneapolis. Nobody there knew I had been on this job interview. And I thought to myself one overriding thought, which is they don't know what they're missing. And I was going to convince CBS News that they made a mistake and that I did belong there and that they should bring me on board. And so I didn't tell anybody, and I started saving money like crazy. And when my contract came up in 2013, the following year, I turned down the contract extension The owner of the entire media company, not just that station, the whole media company told me if I stayed, I'd have a job for life. Now, what media company, Ed, is offering anybody a job for life, right? Huge compliment. I turned it down. I got rid of my apartment. I put everything I owned in storage, and I moved across the country to Washington, D.C. with no job, no health care, and no permanent address because I wanted to work at CBS News. And I would find out where those people who had interviewed me were going to be at public events, conferences, panels, philanthropic events. And I would coincidentally show up. Oh my gosh, Allison, how great to see you here. How are the kids? Hey, by the way, do you know that I live in DC now and I can help out if you need another correspondent? And I did that a couple of times. And they finally said, okay, Mark, stop. Just stop. We get it. Why don't you come by the office on Monday? And I thought, well, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to realize the error of their ways and they're going to hire me on the spot, or they're going to give me a cease and desist order for stalking and say, go away. And so when I got there, the bureau chief of CBS News in DC, the guy who had already interviewed me, said the words that would change my life. He said, we're shorthanded this weekend. Can you fill in for the CBS Evening News as a correspondent? Ooh, I don't know. Let me check my schedule. Let me check my planner. Yeah, yes, I can. And long story short, that one weekend turned into 3 years. And I was reporting across CBS News broadcasts and radio and streaming and around the world. And so the challenge for me is that I didn't get the chance I thought I deserved. And I wanted it so badly, I risked it all. I mean, I gave it all up. My job, my downtown Minneapolis place, my everything. And I bet on myself. Was I scared? Absolutely. I don't think I can swear on this podcast, but absolutely. And did I have health care? No. Did I know where I was going to live other than sleeping in my friend's place? No. But I did it, Ed, because I was just convinced that this is what I was supposed to do. And I heard that calling and I had that gut feeling and I had that fire in the belly. The challenge for me was, and I think it is for many people listening to your podcast, we all have moments in our life where we have that voice. We have that little itch in the back of your neck, that little spark in your head that says, well, I could take this leap of faith. I could quit and go do this. Most people will never do it because the fear is so great. And I respect that. They have families, they have children, they have spouses, they have commitments, they have mortgages. I get it. For me, I was in a position, single. I knew I was going to save a lot of money, right? All these things. I didn't have kids and I could risk it all. And I'll tell you what, I've risked it all 3 times in my career. Super scary. I am grateful that I took the chance every single time. I left Hearst to create my own company, to do it full time, to build what I'm building. Was it scary? Absolutely. I'm proud of myself for not letting fear stop me from following that dream, that voice, that goal. But the challenge is there, Ed. The challenge is our fear. The challenge is, are we willing to step up and bet on ourselves? And so I respect everybody who says no. I wanted to say yes.
One of the questions that I ask a lot of people is on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to your business? How committed are you to the passion of your business? And it's interesting, the responses. Now, a lot of people will say 10, but then I'll probe a little bit and find out, well, if this happens, then I'd have to go do this. No, that's not a 10. That's saying that you've got a contingency plan. And what you did is set yourself up for success and all in. And I've done that. And I'll tell you what, the first time, that's scary.
I'll tell you, Ed, almost every single close friend, and I'm blessed that I have 4 really best friends, almost all of them told me, don't do this. Don't give up this job for life. Don't live. You know, everybody, you break stories like you're well compensated. Don't do it. And you just have that voice. And I just had to follow it.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. Life is full of innovation. And right now we're in an unprecedented stage of elevation around the world. And of course, you and I have talked, and people, process, technology, and culture innovation can be in any one or any combination or all of those for those specific areas. So when you think about innovation and your journey to success, how do you define and what are you doing to leverage innovation to drive your success today?
So I actually just talked about this 10 days ago. We put on several times a year an in-person boot camp, media training, public speaking, leadership communications. We teach, but then everybody does. So we use a TV studio near the White House. You do a 6-minute mock on-camera interview with me on a real TV set. You do a podcast with our national public radio host. You go on stage being coached by a TED Talk coach to the stars. We've changed how we teach just since we launched these boot camps 2 years ago. And 10 days ago, I incorporated for the first time ever in my presentation about pitching to the media, getting free news coverage, fast networks, fast, free, ad-supported streaming television. This did not exist 10 or 15 years ago. You have now seen an explosion more than 60% in 2 years. I think we have now over 1,800 of these fast networks. So for example, Roku, right? You can turn on Roku. There are all these channels that don't exist in real life, like over the air, like a broadcast station of 5.1, right? 5.2, 5.3. But they are lucrative on streaming television. So experts, business owners, entrepreneurs need to absolutely be thinking of your traditional media sources, but noticing that innovation means there are new platforms, new media opportunities, and new technologies that we as entrepreneurs, whether it is owned media, earned media, or paid media, need to take advantage of. So we are constantly have to evolve in what we're teaching and how we're helping our clients. And we just worked in these free ad-supported streaming television channels because whether it's any of those three platforms, owned media, paid media, earned media, an entrepreneur cannot ignore the innovation that has come to the media space. And so we've had to adapt with it. And I have no doubt, Ed, that in a couple months when we do our next boot camp, there will be new innovations that it's our duty to incorporate to make sure entrepreneurs know the latest in the media landscape.
100%. I worked for a university and I loved it. I loved the students. I actually taught for a number of years. And the one complaint that we often heard, and I still hear, I just heard it recently, is that there are too many universities out there teaching curriculum that's 2 years old. And in today's day and age, 2 years might as well be a generation or a lifetime. You're absolutely right. Things are moving so fast in so many different ways. Love your thought process. Always be looking, seeking. It's not just shiny object syndrome. You're focused on innovations to precisely help your customers. That's the other message I take away from that. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I would say that one of the phrases I hated in journalism is, well, we've always done it that way. And I think that's applicable no matter what the industry is. And to pick up on your point, when I was in college, which, as you can tell by the gray hair, was a long time ago, the professors that were my favorite, I had two that were my favorite. They weren't the tenured professors. They were the anchors and reporters out in the field who only had time to teach one class a week, but they brought to us what's happening now in the industry, not 10 years ago, and where the industry is going. Everyone else, all the other professors were teaching the same thing they had always taught. That's what it felt like to me. But it's the people who actually could teach us what's happening now and the innovations we needed to take advantage of that I found the most valuable. And that's what I approached my teaching. Whether I used to be an adjunct at Northwestern University for the journalism campus, the State Department sent me to Pakistan to teach journalists there. It's always teaching practical tips. Here's what you need to know now. Here's what's happening now. And here's where this is going so that they can also be on the forefront.
Absolutely love it. With all that, you've given us some incredible golden nuggets of insight. If there was one that you could say, everybody out there, you really need to consider this as part of your life and business success, what would that be?
Ed, do I have permission to give some tough love?
Absolutely.
So I'm now speaking to every single one of your listeners, and here is the blunt talk that I have for you. Everybody has a story. Every single person listening to this has a story, and you are not doing enough to tell it. And that is the truth. Are you communicating well with your employees, your customers, your investors? Great. What are you doing about the broader public? Are you trying to reach out to journalists? You don't need $20,000 a month for a PR firm. You can do it. Are you reaching out for those paid speaking or volunteer speaking gigs? You don't need a speakers bureau. You can do it because the story that I have told you on this podcast, I hope conveyed what Ed mentioned: resilience, inspiration, innovation. But guess what? All of you have that message too. And it's your responsibility, I would submit, as an entrepreneur to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. How are you getting that message of resilience and inspiration out? It's not about just you. It's not about just your business. I deeply believe that entrepreneurs have a duty to try and help the next generation, or even those now that are trying to form their own journeys, their own business. I believe that every single expert, every single entrepreneur has a story, a nugget, a morsel, that inspiration message that would help somebody now in their own entrepreneurial journey. So I would challenge every single one of you. You have a story, and I don't think you're doing enough to tell it. And I think you have a responsibility to tell it more broadly.
Mark, thank you. Audience, I don't know about you, but I'm inspired, and I got a few things that I got to go check out too, thanks to Mark's insights here. So, Mark, thank you for being on this podcast. Your insights have been absolutely incredible. For everyone else out there, what are your comments? What are your questions? What are your thoughts? Please make your comments and add them in the notes below. I'd like to see your insights. Is this valuable? What are you doing to tell your story out there to the broader audience around the world? Mark, thank you for your inspiration. Audience, my hope is that you take this as inspiration as well, and let us know your thoughts and feedback. Keep innovating, keep elevating, and we look forward to seeing everybody again in the next episode. Have a good one.